When people say aliens are here, what do they mean? They usually mean UFOs, right? Or what we now call UAPs, unidentified anomalous phenomena. People have seen things in the sky they can't explain. And they figure, well, if we can't explain it, it must be aliens. Seems reasonable, doesn't it? But that's not how we figure things out. Now, I want to be honest with you from the start. There's no scientific evidence that aliens are visiting Earth right now. None. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm not saying we should ignore reports. But the evidence that we have, it doesn't hold up to scrutiny. And that's what I want to talk about. How we examine evidence, how we think about what's really happening, and what we should actually believe. Let me tell you something I've noticed. A lot of people are very convinced about something they haven't really looked at carefully. They'll say, well, the government is hiding it, or there are classified documents, or military pilots have seen things. And those things might all be true, but that's not the same as evidence that aliens are here. That's an argument from ignorance. It's saying, we don't know what it is, so it must be aliens. But you see, there's a big difference between saying, I don't know what this is, and saying, therefore, aliens. Here's what's interesting about UFO sightings. Most of them, and I mean the vast majority, about 90%, they turn out to be perfectly ordinary things. Aircraft, balloons, satellites, Venus, meteorological phenomena, even our own experimental aircraft. During the 1947 flying disc craze in the United States, over 800 sightings were reported. The whole country went crazy about it, and then they investigated them. Know what happened? Almost all of them had normal explanations. The U.S. Air Force ran something called Project Blue Book from 1952 to 1969. They recorded over 12,000 sightings. 12,000. And do you know how many remain unexplained? About 701. So that's roughly 5 to 6%. Now, that sounds like a lot until you think about it more carefully. When 94% of reports can be explained by known phenomena, what does that tell you? It tells you that humans are not very good at identifying things they see in the sky. And when you have that many reports, a small percentage will inevitably be something we can't quite figure out on the spot. You see, there's a principle here that I think is important. It's something that distinguishes science from what I call cargo cult science. I'm going to explain this because it really matters. In the South Seas during World War II, indigenous people saw airplanes land with lots of materials, lots of cargo. They wanted the same thing to happen after the war, so they built runways out of sticks and grass. They carved headphones out of wood and had people wear them while standing in control towers made of branches. They waved landing signals and did everything the soldiers had done. The form was perfect. It looked exactly right, but no airplanes landed. Nothing happened, because they were copying the outside appearance of something without understanding the underlying principles of how it actually works. That's cargo cult science. It's doing all the things that look like science. You have reports, you have observations, you have data, but you're missing something essential. You're missing intellectual honesty. You're missing the willingness to prove yourself wrong. Now, when it comes to aliens being here, there's a lot of cargo cult science going on. People collect reports of sightings. They organize them. They publish them. They look official, very scientific. But the fundamental evidence is something that science has known for a very long time is unreliable. Eyewitness testimony. Even from credible people. Even from military pilots. Think about it. If I told you I saw something extraordinary last night, would that be enough for you to believe it? What if I was a very reliable person, very smart, never lied before? Does that make it more believable? Not really, not scientifically. Because we know from all kinds of studies, especially from criminal cases, that eyewitness testimony is not a reliable basis for truth. People see what they expect to see. Their memory plays tricks on them. Stress and excitement affect perception. Now, there was something in 2015 that got people excited. Naval pilots filmed something with infrared cameras. These were real, credible, trained observers using sophisticated equipment. The video showed objects moving in strange ways. And people said, see, this is proof. But you know what that's not? That's not proof of aliens. That's an unidentified aerial phenomenon, UAP. Not the same thing. Not identified doesn't mean alien. It could be a sensor error. It could be something atmospheric we don't fully understand. It could be our own classified technology. Or yes, sure, in theory it could be aliens. But we don't know what it is not the same as therefore aliens. Here's the thing that I think people don't appreciate enough. Before you can claim something is true, you have to think about alternative explanations. You have to actually try to find explanations that don't involve aliens. That's not being closed-minded. That's being scientific. Because aliens are probably the least likely explanation, even if they exist. Let me explain why. This is where it gets really interesting. Suppose aliens exist. I think that's probably true, actually. The universe is huge. There are probably hundreds of billions of galaxies, each with hundreds of billions of stars. You do the math. There are probably trillions of planets out there. Frank Drake worked out this famous equation back in 1961 about the probability of alien civilizations. We don't know the numbers very well, but we know there are a lot of stars and planets. And we know life exists here on Earth. So it would be surprising if it didn't exist anywhere else. Now, there's a separate question. Have aliens visited Earth? And this is where it gets tricky. First, let's talk about distances. The nearest star to us is Proxima Centauri. It's 4.2 light years away. Do you know what that means? It means light takes 4.2 years to get here from there. It would take our fastest spacecraft hundreds of thousands of years to reach it. Hundreds of thousands. And Proxima Centauri is next door, cosmically speaking. Most other stars are much farther away. So if aliens are going to visit us, they've got to travel enormous distances. Now, I don't care how advanced you are, traveling between stars is not trivial. Even at the speed of light, which nothing can do except light, it takes years. And stars are far apart in a way that's hard to really wrap your head around. You could fit 1 trillion Earths in the space between us and the nearest star. This brings us to something called the Fermi paradox. Enrico Fermi was a physicist, and he asked a simple question: where is everybody? He was pointing out that if there are intelligent aliens out there, and if they're capable of interstellar travel, then by now, they should have colonized the galaxy. We should see evidence of them everywhere. They should be here, but we don't see them, at least not convincingly. There are different ways to respond to that question. One response is, maybe they can't travel between stars. Maybe it's a lot harder than we think, or impossible. Another response is, maybe intelligent life is very rare. Maybe it's much harder for intelligence to evolve than we think. Another response is, maybe civilizations don't last very long. Maybe they tend to destroy themselves before they get advanced enough to travel between stars. And that's a cheerful thought. Or maybe, and this is the one people like, maybe they're here and the government knows about it and is hiding it. Which brings us to something important. If intelligent aliens have been visiting Earth and governments know about it, they're keeping it secret. That's what people argue, and I understand the appeal of that argument. There's something satisfying about thinking that the government is keeping a secret. But let me ask you, how many people would that involve? You'd need thousands of people, engineers, scientists, military personnel, politicians, all keeping a secret for decades. Not one of them leaking it. Not one person breaking rank. Now, I've watched people keep secrets. I've worked on classified projects. And I'll tell you, keeping a truly big secret is hard. Really hard. Someone talks. Someone gets worried about their conscience. Someone figures it's more important to tell the truth than to keep their job. Humans are not good at keeping big secrets, especially when those secrets involve something as momentous as contact with alien intelligence. Is it possible? Sure. But you have to ask, what's more likely? That all those people are keeping quiet, or that we haven't actually made contact with aliens? When you put it that way, the answer becomes clear pretty quickly. Now, there's something else I want to address. There have been government investigations into UFOs. Project Blue Book, for instance. And people look at the fact that the government investigated UFOs and conclude, see, the government took it seriously. But that doesn't mean they found aliens. It means they found that reports of strange objects in the sky were common enough that they wanted to figure out what was going on. That's not unusual. If a lot of people are seeing things and talking about it, investigating seems sensible. It doesn't prove the reports are true. In fact, one of the more interesting findings from scientific investigations of UFOs comes from something called the Robertson Panel back in 1953. It was a panel of scientists who reviewed all the UFO evidence and reports. And they concluded that the vast majority of sightings could be explained by natural phenomena or ordinary aircraft. Nothing about their findings suggested alien visitation, but the report was classified for a long time, and when it finally came out, people pointed to the fact that it was classified as evidence of a cover-up. but it was just a classified report about an unclassified topic, and it contained a negative result, no evidence of aliens. Here's what I think is happening. There are a lot of unexplained things in the universe. There always will be. We don't know everything. We're always discovering new phenomena. That's the fun of science. But unexplained doesn't mean aliens. It just means we haven't figured it out yet. Maybe we'll figure it out next year. Maybe we need better equipment. Maybe we need to think about it differently. And when we do figure things out, often they turn out to be less exotic than we imagined. Not always, but often. I remember something that happened with ball lightning. People reported seeing strange balls of light floating around, especially during thunderstorms, for centuries. Centuries. And scientists didn't know what they were. They couldn't explain them. But were they aliens? No. They were a real atmospheric phenomenon that we're still studying. We still don't completely understand them, but they're not aliens. Now, let me give you the flip side of this argument. Let me play the optimist for a moment. The universe is incomprehensibly large. There are, by some estimates, more stars than grains of sand on all the beaches on Earth. And we've discovered that most of those stars have planets around them. We've found thousands of exoplanets now, and many of them seem to be in the habitable zone where liquid water could exist. Water is what we know supports life. We don't know if there are other ways to make life, but water seems pretty fundamental. Now, given that, is it really plausible that Earth is the only place where intelligence developed? That seems unlikely. It seems almost arrogant, doesn't it? Carl Sagan used to say something like, "It would be a lot of wasted space if life only developed in one place." And I think he had a point. So yes, I think it's probably true that intelligence has developed somewhere else in the universe. Maybe in many places. The odds suggest it. But that's different from saying they're here. That's different from saying they're visiting us. In fact, there's an interesting calculation I mentioned. Let's say intelligent life is not rare. Let's say it's actually fairly common. Even then, the problem is time and distance. Even if intelligent life exists right now on planets orbiting other stars, where are they? They could be thousands of light years away. By the time we send them a message, they won't get it for thousands of years. By the time they respond, thousands more years will have passed. And that's assuming they even hear us, or care, or figure out that the message came from intelligent beings. This is why SETI, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, listens for radio signals. It's a reasonable approach, but in all the decades they've been listening, they haven't heard anything conclusive. Not because nobody's out there, probably because the universe is too big. The signals are too faint. The timing is wrong, or they're using technology we haven't thought of yet. So here's where I think we should land on this question. Should we remain open to the possibility of alien visitors? Yes. Should we take reports of strange phenomena seriously enough to investigate them? Sure. There's no harm in investigating. But should we conclude that aliens are here based on the current evidence? No, I don't think we should. What we should do is keep looking. We should study the sky with better instruments. We should analyze the data we collect with rigorous methods. We should be willing to change our minds if we find something truly convincing. But right now, we don't have that evidence. The most important thing, I think, is how we think about these questions. How do we examine evidence? How do we avoid fooling ourselves? Because that's the danger. When you really want something to be true, when you want aliens to be real, when you want mysteries to exist, you can fool yourself into seeing evidence that isn't there. You can interpret ambiguous data in the direction of your preference. You can ignore alternative explanations. You can convince yourself that the absence of proof is proof of absence or evidence or something. I call this cargo cult science. It's not wrong to be interested in aliens. It's not wrong to investigate UFO reports. But it's wrong to treat those interests as facts before you've done the investigation. It's wrong to look at a blurry video and say, well, I can't explain this, so it's aliens. That's not science. That's just guessing. Real science is harder. It's more boring, in a way. It's going out and doing careful observations. It's considering alternative explanations seriously, not just dismissing them. It's being willing to say, I don't know, even when you really want to know. It's being willing to be wrong. So if you're interested in whether aliens are here, here's what I'd suggest. Don't just read stories that confirm what you already believe. Look at the actual data. Look at the reports that have been investigated. Ask yourself, what's the simplest explanation? What would it actually take as evidence? What would I need to see to change my mind? And most importantly, Remember that there's a difference between "I don't know what this is" and "this is aliens." That difference matters. It matters a lot. You know, the universe is plenty strange and wonderful without needing aliens to be visiting us right now. We don't know 99% of what's going on out there. Every time we look at the universe more carefully, we find things we didn't expect. We find pulsars. We find quasars. We find black holes. We find gravitational waves. We find galaxies farther away than we thought possible. That's amazing enough. And here's the thing. If we ever do make contact with intelligent aliens, how do you think we'll know? It'll be because we have evidence that's so clear, so undeniable, that you can't explain it any other way. It will be something that every scientist on Earth agrees is genuine alien contact. That hasn't happened yet. So the honest answer to the question, what if aliens are already here, is we don't have any good evidence that they are. We have a lot of unexplained things. We have some interesting videos. We have reports from credible people. But none of that adds up to aliens actually being here, to having visited, to having been in contact with governments, or anything like that. But you know what? The question itself is interesting. It makes us think about the universe, about life, about what's possible and what's probable. And that's valuable. That's how we learn. I guess if I had one wish for you, it's this. Be curious about the universe. Ask questions. Wonder about things. But wonder carefully. Don't be satisfied with "I don't know," so it must be aliens. Try to figure things out. Look at evidence. Consider alternatives. Be willing to be wrong. And if, someday, we do find convincing evidence of alien intelligence, that will be one of the greatest moments in human history. It will be genuinely amazing. But until that day comes, we should probably keep our feet on the ground and our minds open but critical. The fun of science is not knowing the answers. It's asking the right questions and then carefully, patiently finding out what's true. And that's what we should do here. That's what we should do with everything.